Thank you, ma'am. It is a great privilege and honor to welcome you all to the 11th edition of Creative Theory Colloquium. We're most pleased to have all of you here with us, and I will now request Professor Savita Singh, President, Association for Creative Theory, and a distinguished feminist poet and social theorist who studied at Delhi University for over a decade before moving to become the founder director professor at School of Gender and Developmental Studies. She has 4 collections of poetry behind her and a long list of publications, and a central part of the team and mentor, teacher. Happy Teachers Day, ma'am. And I will now request you to open the session.
Thank you, Jigyasa. First of all, you know that today is Teachers' Day in India, and we wish all the teachers of the world the very best, even though times are very difficult for teachers everywhere.
Happy Teachers' Day.
Happy Teachers' Day. And my teacher is sitting over here, Professor Manoranjan Mohanty. So special salute to him. What you see today is his inspiration, and I have no qualm about saying that he has actually nurtured us to be good students and also conscientious teachers. So thank you, sir, for being such a great teacher. We also have Ashok Bajpayee, who has never been my teacher, but he has different ways of teaching, organizing seminars in Hindi world. Things that he has done are not done by others, like the seminars that he organizes, picks best people for poetry reading. He organizes a discussion on aesthetics and so on. So very precious and a wonderful teacher, not only of Savita Singh, but everyone who's writing, publishing, who's aspiring. So thank you, Ashokji, for being with us. Manindra is here. Without Manindra, I cannot even think that we will have something like this going on year after year. And all the students, 20 students who help us organize this wonderful colloquium. So again, on this Teachers' Day, I would say that we as teachers mentor you to become great teachers in the world. And not for yourself, but for the society. Constantly we need our society to critically examine its wayward, meandering excesses, and we bring things together by our critical faculty. Creative theory basically is a kind of a critical creative theory. So let me welcome you all with all these words. So you can see that we have a decade behind of really, really hard work and organizing that as teachers, you know that how little time we get to do things outside the university. There's just so much work, but we have managed to do it, of course, with the help of, it's a collective effort. All of us pitch in according to our abilities and our needs. So the theme of this year's colloquium is Technology and Society. We have printed a booklet, just as we did it last year also. Last year we discussed a lot of important issues relating to pluralism and relationality in contemporary times, debating theory and praxis, very much in the social theory, how we relate to each other, how we organize a society, how the state functions, what are the individuals, their sociality, their atomism, everything we discussed. So creative theory, I must say, if I'm not speaking in a very hyperbolic manner, it is one forum today, unlike any other, where we discuss the most important issues of social theory in India. We are hoping through our discourses, through our concerns, through our working, our writing, to actually finally have our own political theory in the sense where we focus theoretically on our issues, but we also have friends outside this South Asia region. Our critical theory friends from our International Herbert Marcuse Society are a great source of inspiration, and we are collaborating with them. But to begin with, we started with the collaboration with IIC, India International Center, and it is an unbroken friendship and support. There has never been any problem. So we are all very thankful to IIC for this, and this collaboration will continue, as I will report as what are other things that we are planning. Then the Raza Foundation not only helped us in terms of ideas, because they also are doing the same thing. Ashok ji is the trustee of that foundation, and I cannot forget when he agreed to support us financially in terms of giving us our daily bread and drinks and all that, tea and coffee, and that's how we lifted. So very grateful to the Raza Foundation. It is the foundation's work is also very much in spirit aligned with our quest, our direction, our telos. So this collaboration is also very important. Herbert Marcuse Society I've already spoken to, and the latest collaboration is Shanti Sahyog, which is a NGO but works with the grassroots people, and it's a Gandhian based Gandhian ideas. And Suman Khanna Agarwal is the director, and constantly committed to the cause of poor, constantly committed to the causes of disadvantaged people, and we think that this collaboration will also continue. So 4 of us, and of course, you know that the Association of Creative Theory that we have today, which it is a formalized body, it's a trust now. This year only we achieved it. Before that, it was part of the foundation of creative social theory. And Manindra and GN and various other friends who are part of creative theory now, they actually nurtured it from the very beginning. It has been, I cannot tell you how hard work it has involved in terms of friends who are mentoring students, taking classes, teaching all the time, to do these kinds of things. And Manindra perhaps will speak a little bit more about the foundation. But the Association for Creative Theory has become a distinct body. It has an advisory board, it has executive committee, it has a general body, associate members, lifetime members, all those things we've worked out. So it's more or less a kind of a structure which will be enduring. It's not ad hoc kind of a thing, situation dependent on so many other things. There is a sense of this particular association going forward with its projects, its initiatives. At the moment, our chief program is this colloquium, but we are going to expand. I am very happy to inform you all that we have worked out with IIC a series of publication we call Creative Theory Occasional Papers, in which we will publish good papers written by professors and students or people who participate from India, from abroad. We will be reading the papers, sending it out for blind review, then submitting it to IIC. And so we're going to have a series of occasional papers in a very professional manner, brought out both in hard copies and in digital copy. IIC is not charging us a penny for it, so again very thankful to the publication division of IIC, and Umita will be finally Anita Gurumurthy, who will be the chief editor of all the whole series. Secondly, thanks to Manindra, I would say that we have managed to create a series of publications, Creative Theory series, under which we are publishing books of people who work with us, our students, their PhD work, any research work, deep research work, we are publishing it. And we have signed a contract with Ann Books, and Ann Books has a contract with Palgrave. So our books are getting published from Palgrave and from Ann Books. Ann Books, because the publications, the foreign publications have become very costly for our students to sort of buy, or anybody, young teachers. So Ann Books can buy the Indian edition and it can be available. So we've looked into all of this. So that thing is also going on. For the first time, I'm very happy to inform Ashokji and Professor Manoranjan Mohanty and Manindra that with Tete, who is the program officer of IISc, we worked out something which is very close to my heart. That is to say, in November each year, just as we organize the colloquium, we will be having one-day seminar, one-day program on discussing issues of aesthetics, Indian, Western, South Asian, West Asian, all of that. Half the day we'll discuss theoretically what is being written, what are new books, all kinds of things, just getting a proper understanding of where we are. And the second half we will have poetry reading and, according to Tete, what is it called, when you read poems with action? Huh? Yes, performance poetry. That is what. So IISc is very ambitious in this, because there are a lot of poets in Brazil, in Mexico, in other parts of the world, whose embassies can be contacted through IISc, and we can maybe finally have something like that going on. So it will be wonderful. I feel very happy about it. So you can see that in the future is reflecting, it's becoming luminous already. And with the help of all our collaborators, I think we will be having a wonderful time going ahead in organizing new things, areas where people simply lament, as Ashokji was lamenting, that he doesn't get, because he organizes a lot of programs. We are nowhere close to what he does. He was complaining that he doesn't get musicologists, theoreticians, aesthetic people who discuss aesthetics. So I'm not disheartened by this. I think we'll pull it off in our own way, and we'll work hard, just as I have a lot of faith in young scholars and students. They will come forward, they will play the magic each time they do. And I think collectively we'll go ahead with our collaborators, our students, our young teachers. Some of our students have begun to teach. I want to congratulate them. They've got jobs here and there after working with us in this colloquium, and so well trained. They're better than many scholars of their generation, I should say. I'm very impressed with them. So with all of this that you can see, hopeful, optimistic note on which I want to stop and ask Ashokji to welcome all of us once again as a poet, a renowned poet, as a cultural czar, as he's called, as someone who has a sense for culture and literature, who has joined us only to make us far more flourished. So thank you very much, Ashokji.
Well, friends, I am a poor poet, and I'm surrounded by scholars of various ages and groups and hues and colors, so I'm a bit intimidated. However, I must say that personally I and the Raza Foundation have been very happy to be supporting in a small way this important intellectual initiative. And it is well worth supporting, we feel, and we will continue to support it in future. It occurs to me that, among a body of scholars, you should have always a written something, so that you don't go. Poets have ways of meandering. Anyway, the Raza Foundation was started by a great, iconic Indian painter called Syed Haider Raza, who felt that something should be done for the younger generation. So we are a foundation devoted to arts and ideas. And as I was alighting from my car and rushing to this place, somebody stopped me and he said, "आपका कोई प्रोग्राम है क्या?" मैंने कहा नहीं मेरा प्रोग्राम नहीं. बोले तो किसी और का होगा जिसको आप सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं. So I am somewhat like furniture here. You run into me almost every day. About 5, 6, 7 programs we do in a month. But anyway, it occurs to me that we are becoming simultaneously a technological society, more and more dependent on technology, more and more controlled by, indeed obsessed by technology. And we are also becoming a growingly bureaucratic society, which continues to bureaucratize more and more aspects of human organization, human movement and conduct, even human thought. And we are also becoming, in large parts of this world, autocratic society, which is beset with more and more control, less and less freedom, and more surveillance. All this is happening while technology is progressing and developing by leaps and bounds. Now, movement, communication, knowledge, research, interaction, dialogue have all become more accessible due to technology. But technology, besides spreading information, knowledge, etc., is also made to spread lies, misinformation, fake news, hatred, verbal and other kinds of violence. To me, it occurs that technology has reached a certain autonomy. It seems that technology now generates more technology. It is becoming self-generative. And it keeps on outdating itself very fast. I had a phone and somebody told me, "Oh, this is already outdated." My grandson told me. I'm outdated, of course, but at least my technological instrument should not, but it is. Now, technology is now aggressively intruding into areas of human intelligence, human imagination, human creativity. Homo sapiens have been distinct from the other species due to its capacity to abstract, to imagine and dream, to create, to have a sense of time, and many times to discover and preserve privacy, what Virginia Woolf called the inviolable privacy of the soul. And all these are under assault. Is that true that we are becoming more technological and less human? It so happens, as this advance in technology is taking place, there is a decline in democracy and liberal values all over the world, an increase in racial hatred, religious and communal bigotry, social and state violence. I want to ask those who know, or those who do not, to ponder over this. Is technology, in its so-called innocence, its value neutrality, causing, inter alia, a deficit in our humanness? Is it that this advance and the decline in democratic and liberal values and rise of hatred and violence, there must be some relationship? More and more surveillance is made possible by technology. More and more control over people is being made possible by technology. And more lies and more hatred and more violence are being spread by technology. So this myth that technology is value neutral has to be blasted. Technology is not value neutral. It is, in a manner of speaking, complicit in diminishing or destroying or causing damage to our essential humanness. And therefore, I think this colloquium would be concerned with many of these issues in one way or the other. Since I'm a poet, I must finish with a few lines from a Lithuanian poet whom I met many years ago, Thomas Van Cloa. There are no more signs in the sky, but still one can see and hear in the final darkness before the era of ice or fire. It has been said there will be no more time. 2,000 years, 2 drops, 2 aeroplanes sail through the hemisphere. Time is being condensed, but human beings need not only the opulence, the so-called benefits of development within quotes. Homo sapiens need plurality of viewpoints, of ideas, of instruments, of whatever. And human beings should not be converted into a uniform, controllable entity. We want to be free. That freedom may in our time also mean freedom from the stranglehold of technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Professor Andrew Lamas, who teaches Urban Studies and Critical Theory at the University of Pennsylvania.
Of Marxist Society. I want to let you know it's an international scholarly organization committed to advancing critical theory and praxis. Our president of our society, that you will hear from later, is Professor Immaculada Kangussu of Brazil. We are so very pleased to be working in cooperation with the Association of Creative Theory and the other distinguished sponsors and co-sponsors of this 11th Creative Theory Colloquium. I'm particularly honored to be in the presence of Professor Manoranjan Mohanty, Professor Anita Gurumurthy, and Professor Savita Singh, with whom I've developed close relations, close collaboration. We look forward to continued future cooperation between the Association of Creative Theory and the International Herbert Marcuse Society. I also want to especially thank Ashok Vajpayee for his eloquent remarks this morning. They served as a kind of introduction to my own remarks, so I'm in your debt. Let me begin with this quotation. There is another reality, the genuine one, which we lose sight of. This other reality is always sending us hints, which without art we cannot receive. Those are the words of the great poet from Chile, Pablo Neruda. The left has long imagined a world without work, but surely this does not mean a world without poetic labor, with the kind of labor that enables us to see the world and to recreate ourselves. The title of my remarks is as follows: The Poem That a Poet Did Not Write on Technology. The poem that a poet did not write on technology. A poet did not write the poem, Whispers of Iron and Code, Whispers of Iron and Code, on August 14, 2024. It was produced according to techno-capitalist logics, and here I'm borrowing the concept of techno-capitalism developed by Douglas Kellner, who will address you later in this colloquium. This poem that a poet did not write was produced according to techno-capitalist logics by ChatGPT, the artificial intelligence program. How might a consideration of this poem that the poet did not write provoke a consideration of the contending theories of technology articulated by Gandhi, Ambedkar, and Nehru, as well as by the critical tradition that runs from Marx to Marcuse and Martin Luther King and beyond? What can we say about the poem that the poet did not write, but that is in her name? Please listen to me, please listen with me to the poem that Savita Singh did not write. If you're able to pull it up on the screen for others in the assembly to see, that would be wonderful. Okay, thank you. Whispers of Iron and Code, a poem not by Savita Singh. In the hollow of night's breath, where stars once danced, there are now echoes of iron and code, whispers woven in silicon threads, shadows that move without feet, dreams that pulse in electric veins. The earth hums a different song, a rhythm of gears, a heartbeat of circuits, while the river, ancient and wise, watches with silent eyes the march of steel beasts that tread upon her soul. Once we cradled the wind, our hands brushed the sky's hem. We heard the trees speak in tongues of leaf and bark. Now the wind carries voices, not of the forest, but of wires, singing in a language we crafted and yet cannot understand. The city is a forest of concrete trunks where the sun is caught in glass and steel. We are the birds lost in this metal canopy, searching for the song that we have forgotten to sing. Children of dust and flame, we chase the light through mirrors that do not reflect, but consume. In the glow of screens, we find ourselves and lose the world. Technology, a river of silver, carries us to shores unseen, to lands unfelt. But in this journey, do we remember the soil beneath our feet, the scent of rain on dry earth, the voice of the earth that cradles us still? In the heart of progress, there is a silence, a void we fill with the hum of machines, forgetting the lullaby of the stars and embrace of the wind, the truth in the ancient songs that we have left behind. Savita Singh did not write that poem, if we can call it that digitally manipulated mishmash, that artificial assemblage of tagged words. She could not have written that poem, even in her worst moments. There is no Savita Singh there. There is no humanity there singing in those words, though there is evidence of humanity erased and nature extinguished. Hannah Arendt defines as radical evil the evil where human beings, as human beings, are rendered superfluous. As techno-capitalism changes, a hallmark question remains. Can we find ourselves in our labor? Can we recognize one another as human beings? Are we still recognizable to ourselves? The poem we have heard is not even recognizable as a caricature of Savita Singh's style. No serious artist, today or yesterday, would imitate Bach, or Beethoven, or Thelonious Monk, or Billie Holiday, or Ravi Shankar, or the great Qawwali master Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, though clearly that could be done. Nod to them, yes. Quote them in a passage here or there, yes. As a tip of the hat, as an homage, as a debt acknowledged, yes, but not a copy of the form. The profundity, the bedrock humanity of Shakespeare's to be or not to be cannot be heard as such if one has consumed a steady diet of rip-offs, uninspired copies, merely mimicking the form. To think or not to think, to buy or not to buy, to throw up or not to throw up. Enough. Stop. Such an appropriation is so insipid that it cannot generate authentically, but through repetition and mass distribution over time, it diminishes even that which is authentic. To complicate matters further, though, consider the following. What if, despite the techno-capitalist logics by which this poem was produced, someone is nonetheless moved by this pale and impoverished assemblage? What if they are inspired to seek out Savita Singh's actual poetry? Then what harm has been done? Would it be a mistake to dismiss that experience, to deny its value? Must we, as Theodor Adorno might counsel, vow allegiance to a critical appreciation of the piece's relationship to the historical social totality? The serious artist knows the rule, but is not a rule follower, but rather a transgressor of past forms. And this is the way forward to art and to a reconstructed world for humanity and life. Okay, now I have wrapped myself, maybe trapped myself in spinning thread and cable wires. I trust that the excellent presentations awaiting us will untangle things by building upon the insights we have inherited from the lineage connecting Marx to Marcuse, Gandhi, Ambedkar, and Nehru, Martin Luther King Jr., and Professor Manoranjan Mohanty, and so many more of the distinguished participants and guests in our proceedings today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We extend our deepest gratitude for Shri K.M. Srivastava, the director at India International Center, who couldn't join us today. I would swiftly move on to requesting and inviting Dr. Manoranjan Thakur. Sir teaches at the Center for Political Studies and has been working on questions of Marxism and religion in intellectual traditions, new religious movements, knowledge and practice in Asia. He has been the founding member of the Foundation for Creative Social Research. His latest books include Gyan Ki Rajniti, Bharatiya Chintan aur Samaj Adhyan. Edited volumes include Wounded History, Religion, Conflict, Psyche and Social Healing, Democracy on Move, and his forthcoming work includes Indian Intellectual Traditions, Reflections and Recollections. I request on behalf of FCSR to present his thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I'm very excited about the fact that Foundation for Creative Social Research could nurture creative theory for 10 years. And as we know that it was nurtured by an organization called Developing Countries Research Center for 10 years before that. And so the idea that emerged in 80s has survived in this way, and I'm sure it will move on for many more years, and new things we will achieve in this process. I'm very happy also to see that, as I told Professor Vajpayee, that I'm relaxed today, because I think the new generation has already taken over. Is there to look into things, and I did do nothing this time. I just was relaxing and seeing how things are functioning. Foundation for Creative Social Research is rather informal organization. It's a registered body, but rather informal organization, and therefore we needed more formal association to run this project. But Foundation's advantage is that since it is informal, it can nurture a lot of things. And 3-4 projects that we are now nurturing without any financial support, so-called. One is religion, spirituality, and consciousness, and soon we are going to have a conference on spirituality and aesthetics in November, where it will be partly performance and partly speaking on aesthetics. So intellectuals and performers coming together. This is organized with Ray of Wisdom Association. Second one is Kahat Kabir group, which is now just emerging, and it's a popular philosophy. I'm very much thankful to Professor Vajpayee, who has supported this group, which is in a very incipient form, organized with the students, and this will organize a kind of interaction between Kabir Panthis and scholars in a village in Janakpur. And a lot of students are from different disciplines working on Kabir, and they are going to join this group, so which I think is very exciting project. Again, there is another project which you will be very happy to know, is called Vimarsh Cafe. This is a small group, 3-4 people, without much funding. What they have started is very exciting thing. 1 or 2 people read the PhD thesis and interview the PhD scholar. And it's 1 hour discussion, and it's really achieving a lot of heights in terms of we are getting feedback from many people. We hope this will further flourish, and we want to see if Vimarsh Cafe can also initiate a process of book discussion, like Jigyasa's group is publishing a book review called The Dark. This initiative are the students from JNU, and so I have a lot of hopes that despite moving in a phase where universities' spaces are shrinking, the students are creating their own spaces, and I'm sure there will be many creative theories gradually, many such organizations also emerging. CTC this year, when we were deciding about the topic, we had long discussion about this. In fact, I remember discussion with Professor Madhulika Banerjee, who initiated reflections on technology back in 90s. And I still remember the seminar in which he presented this idea that technology is not class neutral. And we were kind of not very happy with the argument at that time, kept debating about that, gradually got convinced, but she has nurtured that idea for a long time. And not that we agree with everything that she thinks. I remember almost a couple of hours discussion on this. How do we look at technology, and what are the new dimensions emerging now? So what we think now is that technology, for the first time in the history of humanity, has moved from influencing the senses to the human sensibilities. Till now, I think technology was basically influencing our senses, empowering senses to see things more, collecting more data for analysis. Now it is actually entering in the cognitive process itself. It is getting into the genome editing itself. So human beings' internal dimensions are being influenced. So that is the thing that we are worried about. And it is very difficult to live without technology, but it is more difficult to live with technology. So what do we do with that? How do we handle it? I'm sure without technology, probably it was not possible to have Professor Lama here to share the poetry that is written by technology. But then we have to be really aware of the techno-capitalism and what I call the capitalism without any idea of common good. We are entering in a phase of capitalism which I think is deeply passing through a crisis of any philosophy, any supportive philosophy. The idea of common good that was part of the capitalism from very beginning is completely abandoned now. So this capitalism is not only technocratic, but also it will produce what Professor Vajpayee said, very authoritarian state. It is not one state, one regime. It's beyond regime. The nature of a state itself is changing. So we have to see what is the relationship between democracy and technology, between state and technology. I think the new state that is emerging is a very techno-authoritarian state. Whichever regime will come, it will be very difficult for regime also to handle the state, the way state is emerging. So this difference between regime and state, I think we have to acknowledge and see how technology is influencing that. So many questions are unfolding now. The way technology is influencing our cognitive process, that one of the questions that we are really concerned about is the cognitive freedom. Cognitive freedom was always a problem for human beings. I mean, Gramsci's theory of hegemony or the colonial hegemonic dominance and Gandhi's effort to fight that out, create a counter hegemony, all those things were earlier there, but now it has taken a new dimension. The new dimension enters in the realm of consciousness, which is being now controlled in such a way that there was a recent film in which a girl's mind was hacked and she was doing whatever the person wanted her to do. So this is the kind of thing happening not only at the individual level, but also at the political level and the social level. So these are the challenges that we have to fight out, and I think where Madhulika and I differed, and we have to really talk more on that, that merely critique of technology might not help us. We also have to simultaneously find out how do we deal with it at individual level, at social level. How do we select socially important and socially responsible technology? How do we guide the state to move towards invest money in socially responsible technology? We can't live without technology, but we can definitely guide the progress. Similarly, how do we individually fight against this cognitive domination? What can we do? The poetry probably is a protest against this cognitive domination, but poetry cannot be done by everybody. So human mind, which is reflexive mind, the cognitive freedom is essential thing of ours. So at one level, probably we have to fight for cognitive freedom as human right. But at the same time, we also have to empower our capability as human beings to acquire that cognitive freedom and to responsibly use the cognitive freedom. So I'm sure in these 2 days, we will have a lot of discussion on these things. And I think this time, the Creative Theory Association for Creative Theory has decided that we will devote the entire year on this. So it is the beginning of a project where we will invite more people to have debates, more younger scholars to write papers, to debate and discuss in smaller groups and smaller seminars, so that we can publish something. And maybe towards the end, as we were thinking, a long cherished debate, a dream, I think Professor Mohanty's that small slip I still am holding with me, where he wrote, one day we should have journal for creative theory. So maybe by the end of the next year, we will think of publishing a journal of creative theory, which will incorporate these debates and meaningfully contribute to the global debates going on. Thank you very much. I welcome once again.
Thank you so much, Manindra. I just wanted to share, because all of you may not be having this booklet and you're not very sure as to what is going to be the topics of discussion. So just sharing that so that you know how deep we're going this time and what kind of questions we're going to deal with. Manindra has given you a kind of understanding. So, you know, the inaugural session in which we are all sitting today, it has the title It has a title called Technology of Future and Future of Humanity. That is why these questions are coming up, as if there is a limit to humanity that we are already seeing, as if cognitively we are going to be hacked. Somebody told me that our brains, our mind doesn't live in our brain, it lives outside, and it is the clouds where our brains are being deposited. So it's already outside of us. Our autonomy is seriously threatened. Session 1 is Philosophy of Technology, where we will discuss more about it. Then session 2 is Quantum Consciousness and New Technology. Here I will be speaking and I'll talk about quantum physics and feminism. I'll bring in the discourses as to what is happening. Feminists are the most skeptical ones. They've already sensed that we are on the wrong path. We need quantum understanding of physics. Then session 3 is Medicine and Technology. 4th is Science, Technology and Society. Then Technology and Democracy. Then Labor, Law and Technology. Then Social Hierarchies and Technology. And finally, our round table. So we've tried to become as comprehensive as possible. We'll discuss it factually, philosophically, analytically, and critically and creatively. So, coming 2 days.
Sanjana to speak.
Yeah. So she will go.
We also have an extended colloquium on 14th and 15th on literature and technology, philosophy and technology. Just to add to what Man just said, I would now request Sanjana, who's a PhD candidate at the Center for Political Studies, to present the 2023 colloquium report, after which we shall end the welcome address and move on to the next session. But before that, Sanjana, thank you.
I propose that we clap for Sanjana. She is a back more efficient than any technology in a human way.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That's very generous of you. I'm going to keep it extremely short because even I'm excited for the very first session for the colloquium. So, the 10th edition of Creative Theory Colloquium was held on the 4th, 5th and 6th of September at India International Centre, New Delhi, followed by an extended colloquium which was held entirely online on the 7th and the 8th. The colloquium hosted a total of 10 panels and deliberated upon the theme of pluralism and relationality, touching upon diverse aspects from philosophy, politics, religion, gender, and environment. The colloquium facilitated a unique academic atmosphere, one that students and teachers alike yearn for. And our panel coordinators and dedicated team of volunteers last year were the heart and soul of this 5-day festival of creative theory and knowledge. Students and academics from different universities in Delhi and across the country joined us and made the colloquium a success. And before I close this very brief report of CTC 2023, I believe I must take this opportunity to congratulate and express my earnest gratitude to all those who have been a part of this decade-long journey: Professor Mohanty, Professor Vajpayee, Professor Manoranjan Mohanty, Professor Savita Singh, Professor Madhurika Banerjee, Dr. Rityusha, Dr. Dhananjay, and all the names that I have missed. I'm so sorry, but I'm extremely thankful to all of you, and on behalf of the younger and newer members of the Creative Theory Association, I thank you all. Year after year, we have sought inspiration and looked up to you all, and we hope that we could continue to work towards and organize many more colloquiums. And happy Teachers' Day. Thank you.
Has taught at the Department of Political Science, University of Delhi. Currently, he is a distinguished professor at the Council of Social Development, New Delhi. The first speaker for the session will be Naveen. Naveen is an associate professor at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Delhi. His research interests lie at the intersection of laws and STS, Science and Technology Studies. The second speaker for the session will be Anita Gurumurthy. Anita Gurumurthy is a founding member and executive director of IT for Change, where she leads research and advocacy on data and AI governance, platform regulation, and feminist frameworks on digital justice. Our third speaker for the session will be Immaculada Kangussu. Immaculada Kangussu is professor at the Institute de Filosofia, Arts and Culture of the Universidade Federal de Ouro Preto, Brazil. The first speaker for the session will be Andrew Feenberg. Andrew Feenberg is Kellner Research Chair in Philosophy of Technology in the School of Communication, Simon Fraser University, where he directs the Applied Communication and Technology Lab. The last speaker of the session will be Douglas Kellner. Douglas Kellner is a distinguished professor in the Departments of Education, Gender Studies and Germanic Languages. I now request Professor Mohanty to take over as the chair and begin the session. Thank you.
Happy Teachers' Day again. We remember our teachers, and we have here 3 generations of teachers, not only students. Thank you very much. I will not take any time. I will only add to all the messages that we heard in the earlier welcome notes that I think we are at a historical moment when we might lose civilizational confidence. The confidence of a civilization, mostly humans, confidence of a civilization to tackle challenges. And if in 1945 the atom bomb was not only a point of great destruction of humanity and a historical destruction point, so this week they are debating who is ahead in AI, China or US. And some people say China is ahead in AI. So nuclear bomb, 45, nuclear energy 45, and AI for whatever purpose being used. But must we not learn from history? Must we lose our civilizational confidence to cope with this challenge? History tells us that we don't lose, we carry on, we face it. Well, with this initial thought, we now invite a great panel of scholars, activists, and a world of ideas. So we begin with Naveen from IIT, who has been part of the Creative Theory Colloquium before also, so I have great pleasure in inviting you. We take about 10 to 12 minutes, 15 minutes at best, so that there may be a little time for discussion. Okay? Thank you.
This is enough? No? No. Thank you.
No, here without microphone there will be sound.
Do you want me to have it here? Might be. This might jump off again. Yeah. Okay. Good evening, all. Such a pleasure and privilege to be here. It's despite what Professor Mohanty said, it's a little strange space for me. Not because you are strange. I feel it's a tradition which I'm outside of. So I look at technology in a different way, and before I was speaking today, I was really looking forward to hearing Andrew Feenberg. I hope he still joins us, somebody whom I've learned a lot from. And one of the things Andrew's engaging with his work taught me, despite him being one of the last great critical theory scholars of the 20th century, one thing which goes against some of the giants of that you could say a school, is not to take the values which are residing in technology for granted as something which is unitary. And he makes, through 3 or 4 important books, how we could repopulate values. And I don't want to rehearse that argument, of course. Today, I come from a tradition which is termed as science and technology studies, and it was very heartening and encouraging to hear that the colloquium here this year was thinking about technology and society as it's encouraging because technology as a site of theorization is not very common within India. We do look at social implications, social impact, and so on. But to think about technology in a theoretical sense, it's I'm not saying it's absent, but it's not very common. And since last year, we have been starting a space of some kind, trying to foster serious critical theoretical engagement with science and technology, or the Science and Technology in India network. Sort of science and technology studies in India network. So in that sense, it's quite encouraging when I heard about this. Today what I want to do is to, the 10 minutes which I probably have now, is to do a quick snapshot of how to unpack for me this idea of visions and visioning. Yeah, techno-scientific visions and visioning. Yeah. And I think I would need to make 3 or 4 moves, which I come to in a second. But why is visions or visioning interesting and relevant for us? I mean, it's just like, last year, if you go through India in the road and you end up in petrol pumps, you'll see the big man looking at you with something or the other, every petrol bunk. And now, whenever I switch on the radio, I hear Viksit Bharat. It took me some weeks to understand what does that word mean. Yeah, there's a particular understanding of development, and the Indian state is recognized generally as a developmental state, and increasingly the developmental state is a technological state. Yeah, and this word which is circulated again and again, and we still haven't seen the document. I don't know how many of you have engaged with that. We have this new vision of India at 2047. 100 years after the political independence, right? And we only get snippets. It's just like the rest of the state, right? You get a snippet here. This is what we are going to say. This is what we are going to say. But we haven't seen the document yet. Apparently, Niti Aayog was supposed to bring it out by December of last year. It's still not out. But the ambition and claim seems to be that we are going to be a developed country by 2047. And what does that mean? A $3 trillion economy. And so many other things. There is a lot of smatterings of green involved. And then there is...
it will be more like 30 trillion.
Yeah, 35, sorry, what am I saying? 35. Sir, I get my numbers wrong a lot of times. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. But yeah, so... you have the familiar words of AI and all sorts of blockchain and whatnot, right? The IoT. So you take any sort of social arena, you would see a technological arena. That seems to be and that's nothing new in some ways. If you look at the earlier vision document of 2035, done by, this is the 2047 documents done by Niti Aayog, or so it seems. We haven't seen it yet, but the earlier document was by this autonomous body called TIFAC. I don't know how many of you have heard of it. Technology, I've written it down, it's quite a mouthful. Information forecasting and assessment. It's something which they were working on from 2009 onwards, and it came out in 2000, the cusp of 14. And then there was some difficulty with accepting it, anything old, and it took a couple of years, and then finally the dispensation came out with this vision of 2035. All this to say that we have a long number of vision documents which we come out. And how do we think about it as a site of theorization? That's what I want to look at today. Yeah, and one way to look at it is like that billboard in the petrol pump, right? You just sort of look at it and say, it's in some ways some of us who was trained in alternate law, we used to scoff at liberal constitutions, but now I have changed my mind about that. documents have values, visions have values, dreams. I mean, it was funny. I mean, I was coming in my car driving, and my radio station went something like this afternoon. Dreams make us, they get a hold on us. I can't sing, but it was quite funny. It went on, the song went on, dreams make us, and they get a hold on us. And how do we tie something like this, a visioning, to a technological society? That's what I want to do, right? For that, in an audience like this, I need to unpack the idea of technology from which I come. And maybe it's in the great Indian tradition of starting with what it is not. Yeah, nati, right? And it's definitely not the idea of this common sense idea of technology as an application of science. Yeah, it could be sometimes application of an existing scientific theory, no doubt, but the traditions I come from think of it as a structuring of particular kinds of social relations, which gets concretized in a particular way. And this is nothing new, right? There's a vast tract of sociological and historical literature which thinks about technology in this way. Yeah, but for instance, if I want to make a very broad, what comes first? Does the bulb come first? Or does Edison come first, or Maxwell come first? You see, Edison comes first. Would steam engine come first, or would it be thermodynamics? You end up historically, you see that it's a steam engine. So contrary to popular conception of technology as something which is an application of science, as a scientific rationality, you could end up with other notions of technology. All this to say that we could think about technology in a way which is not... So there are two things which comes to your mind. If I ask a class of engineers, undergrad engineers, one is application of science, right? The other one is it makes it more efficient, makes it more rational. Yeah? And then if you start looking at historical examples, you see a lot of technical change is irrational, can be inefficient, yeah? Because it's political. A lot of times technical change can be political. Then what do we do with that insight when we start to recognize that I'm going to move from technical change to socio-technical change, and that's because of where I come from, where we think of technology as a network of social relations. I don't have the time to elaborate on that, but all this to say that once we take techno-social change seriously as something which structures society, and the question then would be, how do we understand agency? In classical political science, you have this difficulty between structure and agency, and then you end up somewhere in between for some people. Some others would stick to their corners. And you have a similar sort of continuum when you look at technology studies. You end up with where does agency stay, and then you would end up with someone like Langdon Winner, who would say we could think of technology as having political properties inherently. It's not that we use it politically, but it's also inherently political. So you would end up with a certain kinds of agency which technologically determined. Society is structured by technology. And on the other end, you would have far less concrete ideas of technology, which would want to recognize the labile way in which technology can work in different social contexts, and yet not denying the inherent values which a technical system could have. Yeah, so there is this continuum in which, and I don't want to take a position there, all this to say that once we move away from the common sense of technology as essentialist, and this is something again which we could go to mid-20th century European theory, which goes on to 30-40 years, you would see certain claim of essentialism in technology, which is increasingly difficult to hold on to, because we could think of ways in which we can have, even as we agree that technologies have values, we don't need to agree that technologies will only have one set of values. We end up discussing a lot on techno-capitalism, because one set of actors in society has captured the technical domain in a particular way and the way we understand technical rationality. Yeah? So all this to say then that we have an idea available for us of socio-technical change which is not necessarily tied to a scientific rationality or a rationality about economic efficiency, optimality, and so on. We could have other kinds of technologies possible then. And that also takes us then back to the question of how does technologies become technologies? How do you understand technological changes in technique? Yeah? So we end up with that question. And we could have multiple answers, but we know this. Ideas make the world. Yeah? Yes, we can have an argument about it by saying that it's hardcore materialists would say no, materials make ideas possible, and that's something, yeah. But here, if we go with the idea that ideas make the world, then visions matter. Our ideas about technologies matter. Visioning matters. Yeah. And then I have 20 seconds to say that we have a wealth of ways in which, techniques through which visioning has been done in the last 70 years, of trying to influence not downstream, upstream ways in which development of technology is conceived. Even before so we have science fiction, right? We have a lot of battles happening in science fiction where we try to understand where does the future humanity lies. So science fiction is a site of imagination, and just like the imagination of rationality, efficiency has captured technology in a certain way. But if we can vision differently, what would that be? We have a 30-40 years tradition of visioning by status bodies. But increasingly, we also have had experiments like Vikalp Sangam. I don't know how many of you have heard of it. The VS modes since 2014 have been looking at various ways in which, and this is not the first time, we have had a tradition of grassroots organizations coming together and thinking about technology in different ways outside of status bodies. So the challenge then is, Professor Mohanty, just give me a couple of minutes, please. I've just built it up till here, right? So yeah. So given that we have multiple kinds of techniques in expert bodies, and yet we have other ways in which we have got. If you look at the example of the NBSAP, the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan.
2 minutes?
Yes, yeah. From 2004 onwards, around 2,500 groups came together in multiple parts of the country, and we came up with a document by 2006. Then the government chickened out, and then within 2 years, they got an apology of a strategic action. But what happened with that, the failure of status spaces to recognize a particular kind of visioning was also, we have a very thriving organic movement now. They were all part of that visioning. So all this to say that visioning, there is a particular way in which we can think about visioning outside of expert domains. Yeah, and we also end up then with questions like, so these are all process. What are the kind of values we want to have in those technologies? That's for another day then. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Technology of visioning and our alternatives still being available. I think that is the message. Thank you. We now have Anita Gurumurthy, Director of Internet for Change. What people can do with Internet.
Thank you, and thank you for the honor. My attempt is to interrogate the present of the AI economy, the artificial intelligence economy, for a possible humanity of our future. So the humanity of our future, the seminar, Technology of Future and Future of Humanity. So I'll focus on digitalization as a phenomenon in the international political economy of development, and I'll probably take less than 15 minutes. To start with, a complex institutional arrangement of fragmented rules and practices draws attention away from the foundational anomalies in the digital economy. And what are these? The denial in the governance discourse that the internet is a public good, the denial that access to the internet is a right, the normalization of data as a commodity and hence data value as private by default, the abuse of existing and pre-digital global regimes in intellectual property, patents and trade secrets, for instance, to lock away precious data resources from the public. The idea that consent can be reduced to an individualized contract. The dogma that data and AI infrastructures are most efficient only when they operate as global facilities owned by supranational private entities. Of course, the list can be longer and it goes on, but this is a narrative slippage, a naturalization of the digital discourse as one that belongs to Silicon Valley's ingenuity. The value character of data and AI commodity becomes independent then of and autonomous from producers. Who are these producers? Workers who make the AI possible, people and places that contribute the data that makes the AI. The casualties of this totalizing and essentialist digital economic model for those who are most marginalized from the global south are manifold. And I'd like to make 4 submissions in this regard. First is the sheer human indignity baked into its ideology. The brazen denial by the protagonists of this model of the rights of the next generations in the global south, rights that include claims over past gains, the claim to disposable time in the present, and claim to a future of freedom. All talk in policy spaces about digital literacy, like Viksit Bharat, and upskilling ring very hollow, because what majority young people in the South need and don't get is well-rounded education that can provide a means to live a life of freedom and dignity. The reality of work in the global algorithmic order is well documented now. We know platforms extract value in the global south where laws are lax and guarantees minimal through a never-before labor squeeze, constant surveillance of workers, penalization for behavior deemed deviant, and brazen dismissal of the wage-labor relationships. Platforms re-socialize the labor contract as fragmented units based on tasks, multiple gigs per worker, managed through expanding networked geographies that include work and life, but constantly preventing workers from being able to define their collective experience of work as a shared material reality. In our ethnographies in Bengaluru, we have seen the uphill task for workers to build solidarity and community. Paradoxically, though, the geographic clusters where migrants live are important sources for platforms like Urban Company, who use these geographies of precarity to recruit and onboard labor, scouting for very specific social profiles. Supervisory teams are routinely sent to low-income areas to onboard women from oppressed castes for stigmatized jobs. Platforms thus ascetize and appropriate embedded community in various ways, but deny workers the basic right to build community. The global division of labor in algorithmified workplaces follows old markers, only its indignity is much more intense. Secondly, the fundamental issue of the economy today is also that it's driven less by a logic of innovation and production and more by the forces of distribution. All market forces are directed towards ubiquitous consumption and fast disruption, finding new markets and being the first to realize value, first mover. The innovations we celebrate are mostly rooted in non-productive distributed forces sought to be perfected by first mover monopolies and not linked to real value generation. First movers like Alibaba and Amazon have been able to build logistics chains in large parts of the world with a market dangerously and poisonously tilted towards an endless consumption cycle vying for eyeballs on loop. The revolution in distribution and consumption has also seen data-enabled market segmentation used by tech businesses to mop up household surplus. EdTech companies, Byju's, come with infinite product offerings geared towards low-income households. Fintech offers bountiful products in a largely unregulated market, exploiting those desperate for credit as little as 500 to 800 rupees. And all of this for data about the household. Now to my third point. The liberal conception of digital freedoms has created a host of challenges in how we conceive of the AI paradigm. A narrow reading of rights as liberal freedoms to consent, to privacy and more, fails to democratize the purpose and value of AI. There are no public rights in the AI economy, despite the hundreds of human rights guidelines issued by UN and other organizations. What we have at best, and that too for the privileged few, are consumer or user rights. The infrastructural publics in the AI value chains, the political communities that must be vested with rights, subnational jurisdictions and communities of faith, panchayats, municipalities, libraries, small farmers, peasants, street vendors in the global south are disenfranchised and lack the legitimacy to have a say. The OECD is just about waking up to this debate and is issuing a notification and guidelines for its business and human rights protocols for AI value chains. But this is unlikely to be within the narrow frameworks of liability that do not reflect duties and commitments of corporations and nation states. Many governments in the South are already part of bilateral trade deals through which they have written off their right to scrutinize algorithms of transnational companies. This means that even courts will not be able to intervene in instances of algorithmic injustice. Fourthly and finally, the takeover by big tech of innovation and of socioeconomic infrastructures signifies a loss of the publicness necessary for economic democracy and innovation. Activists and independent civil society actors in the South are confronted with the tall order of working our way through short-sighted opportunism and the lack of vision and courage of our own governments in global arenas. And so, how do we address the global political economy of the digital amidst the criminal capture of public and policy space by big tech? This is our question. How do we denaturalize the current neoliberal consensus on data and AI? What are the regimes of public reason we seek nationally? And what do we see as appropriate in the global regimes that can further collective freedoms in relation to the digital economy? So I come to the second part of my presentation on where do we go from here. Science fiction was mentioned, so I will mention Lord of the Rings. It turns out that Silicon Valley billionaires have also been very impressed with the book. So for example, Palantir, as in Palantir Technologies, which is the largest surveillance company co-founded by billionaire investor and Trump supporter Peter Thiel, the word Palantir is based on one of the artifacts that comes in this science fiction novel. And in Lord of the Rings, the word Palantir refers to an indestructible crystal ball with the ability to see faraway events as well as peer into the past. And Thiel's Palantir specializes in selling intelligence, what he calls actionable intelligence, which is a euphemism for violence on peoples and nations. And it's generated by analyzing data obtained from the company's unmanned aerial vehicles, which are fitted over hostile terrain. Palantir's system has been used in the Israel Defense Force in killing Hamas fighters in Gaza, predictive policing in Norway, so much for the EU's call to human rights, and the US Immigration and Customs Enforcement in rounding up illegal immigrants, adults and children alike. Such is the power of big tech, infrastructural power, power to define materiality to grasp the future. If this future, a future by technology, is the sum total of existence, we are certainly in a present state of emergency. Yet, what we know is that the intelligence infrastructures of today are not immutable. The techno-economic paradigm and its injustices can be addressed through thoughtful and bold actions that delegitimize the dominant AI model. This is about democratic control, the capabilities not only for freedom of knowledge, but the very freedom of consciousness, some of the issues that were raised about sensibility. I was introduced to the idea of freedom of consciousness through my reading of Paulo Freire, Brazilian philosopher and pedagogue. The crystal ball of AI can see, it may even claim to know, but understanding is always human. It's a result of the truth conditions we create through conscious knowing, critical knowing, the relationship we establish through institutional norms and processes between human dignity on the one side and tools of reason on the other, that thinkers like Gauri Lankesh martyred herself for. Today is her day of martyrdom. Here is where we go to the past. The history of digital architectures, the emancipatory models that came up 35 years ago, those that we have been forced to forget in the software, data, network, and information commons. And I would like to offer 3 tentative thoughts on how do we move from the rather tenuous present, how do we reinvent our politics. I'll end in a minute or two. Okay. First is the reassertion of the idea of the people into political discourse. The idea of people and popular sovereignty was born between the great 18th century revolutions and the mid-20th century movements for decolonization. And I talk about this because we're all reduced to users of technology. The simple truism is that democratic legitimacy requires authorization from the people. Modern institutions built on the constitutional theory of public authority are rooted in the doctrine of popular sovereignty. The limited government of the constitutional order was theoretically possible because of the unlimited power ascribed to the people. What has really happened today is the march of digital capitalism, and here is the decoupling of ideas of sovereignty from public reason. We are all reduced to users and data subjects, and we all want to sign up for our privacy. As individuals, we struggle against the right and might of these corporations as equal contenders to processes of justice. These corporations are people in courts, but we must resist this abominable equivalence. We, the people, in an assertion of the claims of those in the margins, of the voice of dissent, of the corporeality of oppression, the collective claim to the future and the future of institutions. Secondly, we need to revitalize our politics of recognition to make the assertion of popular sovereignty genuinely transformative. We do not want to be segmented by Instagram as queer, right? The spectacle of gender politics is everywhere today, but as feminist people, we must defy the delusional logic of individuation we see in big AI that dominates us. We are more than the aggregations and dissections of algorithmic existence. We may be queer, migrants, oppressed castes, tribals, and the indigenous, and any and all of our intersections must defy adaptations as algorithmic personas. So we must rebuild our politics of misrecognition to a place of dignity and belonging to those who are denied these. And finally, and thirdly, we need to build, use, and propagate very specific artifacts that stand for a new economy of commoning. We need to do this not just as resistance politics, but as a societal praxis. The urgency to reclaim society and the planet from the criminal capture of surveillance capitalism cannot be overemphasized. In the ivory towers where policies are discussed today, there is brazen delegitimization of everything public. Public finance, public universities, public parks, of the entire role of the knowledge commons, of public technology. And so, all of this comes with a huge cost. The digital commons movements are aligned with the ethos of a transformative world that can be profoundly feminist. It can nurture a digitality of care rather than of extractivism. These lenses, both of the commons and of feminism, provide us the means to tackle the acute maldistribution wrought by the emergency. We can think of platform cooperatives. We can think of how public digital infrastructures can support small businesses. We don't need big data and big AI for everything. A small farmers cooperative can decide to go with a small AI model, but that will need some kind of support from the government for foundational AI modeling in Indian languages. So, to conclude, the humanity of our future hinges on the discovery and practice of a political economic paradigm based on the digital commons scaffolded by the public. A paradigm in which critical human consciousness, complemented by machine intelligence, can forge a new sensibility of dignity, a new care ethics of society and economy. These paths are not ready-made, but I want to quote Manuel Castells, who gave us the right to start all over again. So Castells talks about the right to start all over again, to begin the beginning after reaching the threshold of self-destruction by our current institutions, so that we can relearn how to live together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First, we were horrified by the digital capitalism, what it is doing to marginalized people, particularly in the global south. But then, in the second half, she gave us some really weapons of the oppressed and how to build, what's it called? new economy of commoning. That's a wonderful expression. Public university, public knowledge, public, a whole range of things. Thank you very much. I think that makes us hopeful. Thank you. We now move to our Brazilian colleague, Immaculada Kangussu, faculty member, University Federal of Ouro Preto. Kangussu, welcome. Please.
Thank you, Professor Mohanty. Congratulations for all the professors, for us, all the professors. I'll be very brief to talk about technology of future and the future of humanities. I wrote a brief text named Technological Obscenities. I'll read it. The relationship between technology and the future is quite complex. Since technology spotlights make the flowers of technological achievements shine brightly, capitalist society prefers that the full, filthy, dirty parts linked to their roots remain out of scene. I will highlight first that technology is produced and developed at the expenses of nature. Even the good technology affects the environment with the consumption of natural resources which it cannot replace. Second, that there is a use of death-oriented technologies to develop new weapons and new methods to kill. And finally, how can we address these facts in forms capable to show how deadly, therefore inadmissible they are? I think that this is the aim of this meeting, of this conference. Huh? A society with technological mastery of minds and matter, in Matthew's words, plays with destruction. This is a quotation from One Dimensional Man. I would like to talk about the obscene dimensions of technology and the future of humanity and the future of Earth. From the Latin obscenus, obscene means offensive to decency, to sense, immoral, full, filthy. Or a preposition that can mean both in front of, and against the, place seen, that means view, presentation, display, and so on. We know, but only few of us can see that technology affects the environment with the consumption of natural resources. Technology is produced and developed at the expenses of nature. The manufacturing of technological devices requires the use of energy and extraction of minerals, as you know. Minerals, metals, fossil fuels, petroleum, coal, natural gas are non-renewable resources. Mining and mineral extradition produces toxic material, water, air, and soil contamination, habitat destruction, and other environment impacts in our so battered planet. My first point is that it's not easy to imagine how does it mean in terms of destruction to produce 20 tons of dead mud. I repeat, what does it mean in terms of destruction to produce 10 tons of dead mud to get 1 ton of lithium, for example? I spoke to a technical engineer to obtain these data. This is not my field of study, and he said to me, a right-wing guy, he said to me, there is no mining without garbage, without dead material. And I'm not talking about toxic material, it's worse. We know, but we can't figure or see these quantities. In Brazil, there is a saying, what the eyes don't see, the heart doesn't feel. Here, around Ouro Preto, the city I'm in, we can see miles and miles of a sort of pools, tanks full of dead mud produced by mineral extradition. Sometimes one of these tanks ruptures, causing a tragedy. People cry and business goes on. The name of the city, Ouro Preto, means black gold. The name of the Brazilian state where the city is located, Minas Gerais, the name of the state, means mines everywhere. Local people here have no doubt about the cost of technology, even of the good one. About the second point, about and against the bad technology developed to kill, I would like to read a piece of a pacifist letter reflecting on scientific and technological development, wrote by the philosopher Bertrand Russell, not a left-wing guy, and signed by Einstein, among other distinguished physicians. The letter said, in one point, there lies, it's about technical development, nuclear development, nuclear energy development. There lies before us, if we choose, continual progress in happiness, knowledge, and wisdom. Shall we instead choose death because we cannot forget our perils? We appeal as human beings to human beings. Remember our humanity and forget the rest. If you can do so, the way lies open to a new paradise. If you cannot, there lies before you the risk of universal death. That's the risk we are in now. Written in 1965, these words remain true, although unheard or not considered as determining. Which brings us to my third point. How to bring to light what is hidden, the obscene side of technological progress, what needs to be left out of the picture so that the current structure continues to live. Perhaps art is a medium to show what is really happening, since it can escape from the limitations, the censorship of reason. To close this brief speech, I would like to show you, but I think it is not work, let's try. I would like to show you 2 minutes of a pacifist movie, a piece of art made by an artist named Harun Farocki, born in Czechoslovakia and naturalized German. I think Farocki found a way to make people feel. I'll try to show 2 minutes of this brief video. I'll try here. Yesterday I tried with Natalia, it works. Let's see. Do you can see?
Yes.
Yes.
Ich heiße Tai Binh Dan, bin vietnamesischer Nationalität, geboren 1949. Ich möchte hier die Verbrechen der amerikanischen Imperialisten, begangen an mir und meinem Dorf, anzeigen. Am 31. März 1966 gegen 16 Uhr hörte ich, als ich gerade das Geschirr abwusch, den Lärm von Flugzeugen. Ich stürzte zum Unterstand, aber kaum war ich durch die Tür, wurde ich von der ganz nahen Explosion einer Nachbarnbombe überrascht. Die Flammen umgaben mich von allen Seiten mit einer unerträglichen Hitze. Dann wurde ich ohnmächtig. Das Nachbarn hat mich am Gesicht verbrannt, an beiden Armen und Beinen. Mein Haus wurde ebenfalls verbrannt. Nach 13 Tagen Bewusstlosigkeit erwachte ich in einem Bett eines Krankenhauses der FLN. Wie können wir Ihnen Napalm im Einsatz und wie können wir Ihnen Napalm-Verletzungen zeigen? Wenn wir Ihnen ein Bild von Napalm-Verletzungen zeigen, werden Sie die Augen verschließen. Zuerst werden Sie die Augen vor den Bildern verschließen. Dann werden Sie die Augen vor der Erinnerung daran verschließen. Dann werden Sie die Augen vor den Tatsachen verschließen. Dann werden Sie die Augen vor den Zusammenhängen verschließen. Wenn wir Ihnen einen Menschen mit Napalm-Verletzungen zeigen, werden wir Ihre Gefühle verletzen. Wenn wir Ihre Gefühle verletzen, dann kommt es Ihnen vor, als führen wir Napalm an Ihnen und auf Ihre Kosten vor. Wir können Ihnen nur eine schwache Vorstellung davon geben, wie Napalm wirkt.
Eine Zigarette verbrennt mit etwa 400 Grad. Napalm verbrennt mit etwa 3000 Grad Hitze. Wenn die Zuschauer mit den Folgen von Napalm-Einsätzen nichts zu tun haben wollen, dann muss man untersuchen, was sie mit den Ursachen von Napalm-Einsätzen zu tun haben.
You're good? Then it's okay. You returned to the room on Zoom. Okay. Well, thank you. I would like to finish saying that the bill always arrives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Somebody has to maybe later analyze this. Thank you very much. Now, should we ask Andrew to explain?
Okay. Then we move to Andrew Feenberg. He's not there? Oh, he's not there. I see. Okay.
So we can ask Professor Charles Rice to speak if he wishes to.
Sorry?
We can also ask Professor Charles Rice to speak if he wishes to.
Douglas Kellner.
Douglas Kellner there? Yeah. So, we finally request Professor Douglas Kellner, our old friend from the International Mercator Society, distinguished professor, Department of Education and Gender Studies. Yes, please.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm so sorry I didn't get to hear all of Lekka and Andy's. You can send me your presentations, but here it was 5:30 when I got up, and it was too early for me to function, but hopefully I will be able to do a paper for you. I want to talk today about digital cultures, technologies, and the transformation of citizenship. I want to argue that digital cultures today are transforming the very nature of research, communication, writing, art, education, and politics, while proliferating novel cultural forms from YouTube to TikTok across the globe. I will discuss the cultural transformations involved in the digitization of culture and the implications for politics, education, and citizenship. Finally, I'll discuss critical digital literacy and the transformation of education and production of culture and of citizens in the sense of John Dewey to meet the challenges of a new era. So first of all, with a nod to Jürgen Habermas and his concept of the public sphere. In, I think the late 1950s, he wrote a book called The Transformation of the Public Sphere. And in Habermas's story, once upon a time there were men and some women in coffee houses, pubs, and public squares, reading newspapers and literary and philosophical and political pamphlets, and they were participating in the English revolutions, the American Revolution, the French Revolution. So for McLuhan, it was print media that formed the modern citizen, that through reading and discussing books, the bourgeois revolutions emerged with the ideas of the utopian socialist, Marx and Engels, anarchism, and all the revolutionary ideas of the 19th century created a new bourgeois public sphere. Now, I want to turn to Marshall McLuhan, who was a Canadian theorist of technology, to get deeper into the cultural forms that and the technologies that actually produce culture. In fact, McLuhan has a technological theory of history. He begins with oral culture. In the times of Homer and the Greeks, poetry, plays, all of the Greek cultural forms were oral in communication. Heracles, the great orator of Athens, in the Peloponnesian War, used speech and rhetoric to persuade the people of Athens, the citizens of Athens, to defend themselves against Troy. So citizenship in the Greek democracies was constituted again by dialogue in an oral tradition. And from reading the dialogues of Plato, we see that his teacher Socrates went down every day to the public market sphere and had discussions about what is justice, what is the good, what is the beautiful. Again, it was oral culture that created Greek philosophy. Now, of course, Plato wrote down Socrates' dialogues. Aristotle gave his metaphysics, his ethics, his politics, his aesthetics in lectures. He was one of the first professors, maybe, but eventually his lectures were written down. Just like in the medieval period, you had the same form of oral culture with the church being the repository of cultural forms, and the oral culture took place in the great church cathedrals with music and psalms, songs, sermons, Bible verses, and poetry. So again, you have in the medieval period an oral culture. And of course, all the non-Western cultures, all the great religions of Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, the many religions of the world were also oral cultures. So I bring McLuhan in because his theory is that in the modern world that Habermas discussed, the modern public sphere, for McLuhan, it was print media that produced the modern world that Habermas and other social theorists have described. That in his 1962 book, which is underrated and even forgotten, McLuhan wrote a book called The Gutenberg Galaxy, where he documents how the technology of the Gutenberg press that produced the Gutenberg Bible created, first of all, the individual, the modern individual. Some people say it's the Renaissance that created individualism, but the real individual bourgeois culture was from the printing press, according to McLuhan. That individuals read books like, well, it started off with the Bible. The Gutenberg press was produced to create Martin Luther's Bible, so that everyone could read the Bible. And according to Protestantism, you had to read the Bible all the time. You know, the Catholicism, you went to church and the priest would give the sermon and you would just sing. But the bourgeois individual is reading the Bible all the time and is creating a bourgeois subjectivity, a critical consciousness and autonomy that Immanuel Kant said was the form of enlightenment. And this printing press also gave form to literature and national culture. In every European country, McLuhan argues, you have a national culture of great writers. So in Spain, you have Cervantes, Don Quixote. You have Lopez de Vega, Calderon, the playwrights. You have a great flowering of Spanish poetry and plays. And so again, this creates a national Spanish culture, a national literature. Likewise in England, that we English-speaking people know well. Chaucer, Shakespeare, Milton, all of Hume and Locke and the philosophers. Again, this comes out of a book culture and the printing press. And here's also, when you have books like Locke, Hume, Hobbes, political philosophers, you have the beginning of the public sphere with Habermas discussing the political ideas and debates of the time. The same thing in the American Revolution. In the U.S., you have a print culture quite early in the colony's history. Americans were very addicted to newspapers, but also political pamphlets. Thomas Paine wrote The Rights of Man. Thomas Jefferson wrote treatises on democracy. The Declaration of Independence was written by our founding fathers, the Constitution. They were all published and sent through the colonies. So again, it was the printing press that created the national culture of the United States, including the political culture. Now, McLuhan goes farther and argues the modern state is also produced by the print media. The American state, the British state, the French Revolution comes right after, 2 decades after the American Revolution. So you have all of these state bureaucracies and apparatuses that depend on print to govern. Print is used for communication with soldiers and military and diplomats all over the world. Government culture, bureaucracy, what Max Weber calls rational accounting. All of this is due to print culture, the forms of modern government. Let's see what else. Nationalism and the 19th century. Again, it's print culture that creates nationalism. In Germany, you have German nationalism, Schiller, Goethe, Herder. You have the formation of a national German culture and consciousness. French culture developed before then. You had all of the great French writers. You had Montesquieu, the Spirit of the Laws. You had Rousseau. You had Racine, the great playwrights, Molière, and the French novel, of course, in the 19th century. So again, it's the print media that creates literature. National literatures are created by the printing press. We talked about English, French, German, etc. So the cultures, the literatures, the states, and then nationalism in the 19th century. Now, and I'm following McLuhan in the technological framework of my argument. So far, we've gone from oral culture, where speaking was the way that culture was transmitted, to a book culture where the printing press, print media, was the dominant form of culture. Reading, discussion, debate, books formed the national political cultures and the literary cultures and the nations, etc. in the 19th century. Now, the 20th century, something else happened.
Professor, will you have about 5 minutes or more? Okay?
I'm actually, since I'm not reading my paper.
Okay, so about 5 minutes more? Okay.
And I think I can get it. Okay, where are we? 20th century. Yes, so we have electronic media. We have movies, we have radio, we have television. And again, they do the same thing that print media has done. In the United States, maybe the first national film culture, D.W. Griffith doing The Birth of the Nation and all of these films about American culture. Actually, the French also had a national film culture. Abel Gance made an epic about Napoleon, and you had Jean Vigo and other French filmmakers showing you the Industrial Revolution. Actually, the French filmmakers created realism and fantasy in even the 19th century. Lumiere showed factory workers coming out of the factories in his documentaries and documented everyday life of the working class. He showed the bourgeois class, kids playing in a garden. This is a silent movie era we're still into. German silent movies created expressionist film culture. Caligari and all the Fritz Lang movies, monsters and horrors. And the great German-American critic, Siegfried Kracauer, in his book on German Expressionism, said German Expressionism created the basis for Nazism. That these tyrants, the sense of crisis, the horror in German society created a cultural atmosphere that Hitler could create. But really, McLuhan gets at the heart of Hitler and electronic media, the radio. Hitler was the first evil genius, if we can say, of the radio. Hitler used the radio as what McLuhan called the tribal drum. Every speech McLuhan gave was the only thing on the radio at the time. So if you're at home, you listened to Hitler's speech. If you were in the pub or walking around the town, you heard speakers blaring out Hitler's Nazi speeches. Now, by contrast, in the United States, Franklin Roosevelt uses radio for his firetime chats. So during the Depression, when the national economy collapsed, Franklin Roosevelt every night gave these cool, reassuring talks to the nation saying, you know, the best is yet to come. We have this New Deal program. And by the way, my parents were Depression-era kids who, you know, their parents were unemployed. My father, all my aunts and uncles had to work as kids. But Franklin Roosevelt got them all into college. He had a, you know, college bill, so both of my parents went to college when World War II came. Well, even after they graduated from college, they went to Washington to work for the government. Then when World War II came, my father joined the Navy, and after the war, my parents went and worked for Roosevelt. So Franklin Roosevelt is a god for my liberal democratic family in the same way that Hitler was a god to Germans, or Stalin to Russian. Of course, I left Uncle Joe out of this story. Russia had the greatest, probably the greatest political film: Eisenstein, Kudobkin, Dovchenko, the documentaries of Ziga Vertov, Bolshevik films. So then after World War II, we have a whole different situation. We have what Adorno and Horkheimer called the culture industries. Adorno and Horkheimer were German Jewish refugees. They came to the United States. They showed that American media, radio, film, the emergent television, was every bit much as ideological as, say, the German culture that they'd experienced under Nazism. And one of the guys, Franz Pollock, went to the Soviet Union and studied Russian culture. Well, they said American culture, movies, television, advertising, radio, it's the American way of life. And this is where I grew up, with Ozzie and Harriet, Father Knows Best, Leave It to Beaver. These were middle-class nuclear families, and it taught you how to behave, it taught you the values, the leaders of society, the police, the lawyers, the judges. Those were our shows we watched on TV. So we were inculcated that American society was, the best way of life, etc. And then came the 1960s and the revolution, cultural revolution. And it started.
Sorry to interrupt.
Give me
Can
2 minutes.
2 minutes, yes, thank you. Because it's becoming more and more interesting, I know.
I'll rock through it fast. But so in the 60s, we have rock and roll music. We have new Hollywood films like Easy Rider and Woodstock, a new youth culture. We have a new left, an anti-war culture. And then, now I'm jumping fast into digital culture, and that's where I wanted to end. Suddenly, with computers and the internet, we have a new digital culture. And I'm sorry that Andrew Feenberg isn't here yet, because Feenberg and I, from the first up till this day, have been doing critical theories of technology based on the Frankfurt School, where we argue that digital cultures, computer culture, now social media culture, is the new cultural form, and it's a contested terrain. So on one hand, you have the right wing using Trump was a master of Twitter. Rush Limbaugh, a right-wing fascist, was a master of radio. I had a left-wing public access show in Austin, Texas from 1978 until the 90s, where I had a left-wing access show in Austin, but was shown all over the country. After I left Austin to come to UCLA, Alex Jones, one of the most right-wing guy, took over. So in other words, you have the right and the left, progressives and reactionaries, using digital media, and that's what we have today. We have in our races, our struggles over class, gender, race, sexuality, and in the election now, our presidential election, Trump, as always, uses social media to put out his lies and his misinformation. So I was just going to conclude with what we need is critical media and digital literacy. More than ever, we have to be able to distinguish between information and misinformation. And by the way, this isn't just in the United States. Throughout the world, the Western world, all the world, there's struggles between autocracy and democracy. All of these autocrats, like Trump, like Putin, like Netanyahu, they all use the media, and in particular social media, to try to control their citizens. Well, to be a good democratic citizen in the sense of John Dewey, to fight against autocracy and for democracy, you have to be media and computer literate. So you have to know how to distinguish between information and misinformation. In the US, it's easy. We have three big cable television networks. Fox is right-wing news. CNN is in the center, although anti-Trump. And MSNBC is left liberal all day. They attack Trump, they defend terrorists, etc. So you have to be informed where you're getting your sources. It's easy on TV, but the internet, there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of messages coming out. So you really have to be computer literate to get information to be a democratic citizen. So this is my conclusion. We're now in a stage of digital culture. And by the way, I still love books. I spend my life reading and writing books. I don't want to say book culture, throw them away. They will do everything on the computer, and it's all digital culture. But we have to be literate in digital culture. We have to participate and use the digital culture to fight autocracy and to defend democracy. And boy, am I glad I didn't read my paper, because I would have never gotten through it. But this woke me up. Usually I'm dead asleep at this time. But by giving a talk and seeing your faces there, I woke up. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Because you are a great communicator, so we thoroughly enjoyed. But because you joined late, you didn't know that we had agreed on a time limit of 12 to 15 minutes. That was our problem. But we thoroughly enjoyed. And the thesis is most important. Digital culture is going to be an even more contentious terrain than we have seen cultural realms in the past, because you gave us the history, from oral culture to print culture to the radio culture. Thank you. Now, sorry? Charles Wright. Okay. Would Professor Charles Wright join for a little while? Say 5 to 7 minutes comments. Well, Charles, will you come in? Great.
I will for just a moment.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
And then maybe at the end. A couple of minutes I might take. You want to start? Yeah. Okay.
So, I would like to thank all the esteemed panelists for their brilliant presentation. And my question is I have two questions. One for Naveen sir. So, sir, I'm very much fascinated by the idea of, network of, when you say technology, when you see technology as network of social relations, right? But when I see technology, or we talk about technology precisely, when I see technology is like a contradiction, like it's human and then there's technology. This technology is taking up employment and all this sort of thing. But when you talk about technology as network of social relations, I'm intrigued to know what do you mean by that. And my second question is to Professor Douglas. So when you're talking about digital cultures, and when you talk about social media or social networking platforms, so with the advent of social networking platforms, there was this sense of the optimism that revolution will be twittered, right? With that kind of a promise of social media, and then with the literature of Manuel Castells, we see that it does not have that kind of potential, right? It harms as well. So in this debate, where do you place yourself? I would like to know that. Thank you.
We'll take a few questions and then.
Should I speak also for Andrew?
We will have to the panel in a moment. Let's take a couple of more questions. Yes.
So is it okay if I have comments?
Yeah. We'll take a few more questions. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I just start by, I want to Mr. Vajpayee, I think rightly pointed out, so with very terse sort of quotes from Heidegger, where he says that with the technology, the world seems to be more and more interconnected, but there is no nearness anymore. We have more and more buildings, but we do not dwell in the world anymore. So given that to be the case, Professor Lamas spoke about, opened with Neruda's quote on science and science from the other side. Well, it is not possible, I feel, in this world because the ontologically there is no space for the spirit in our philosophical worldview. And we don't have any space for transcendence. Our world is reigned by the tyranny of the empirical. I would also sort of make a comment on Professor Thakur said that yes, it is true that we are cognitively dominated today, and we need not look further than the crack cocaine we carry in our pockets, we call smartphones. And the situation is such that I think today the only revolution that we can have is to say no. Technology has brought us to such a brink that to say no has become impossible. So to quote Melville's Bartleby, we have to say, I prefer not to. And this, more and more, our alienation is because since we have said that God is dead, to quote Dostoevsky, now that God is dead, I am God. And I would just, with a parting last question, or last proposal, I propose that I think the time has gone that we need to move beyond the differential impacts of technology and limit the discussion to political access or participation. Because I think the situation has come where we have to think of what is ontologically at stake for man. And without that answer, more provocatively, I would like to put that perhaps it is possible for us to imagine that person who doesn't have technology today, is it a possibility that only he is free?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Your name is?
My name is Manoranjan. I am from IIT.
Okay, Manoranjan. Thank you very much. And next? Yeah. Yes, please, Professor. Mike.
When Einstein developed the chain reaction, he said he did not foresee that the bomb would be possible in his lifetime. So the question of time and how the scientist perceives time, or the the short-sightedness of the scientist. And and when the bomb was dropped, he said, so what if 2/3 of the world were destroyed? Man is intelligent enough to rebuild the universe, the earth that he has destroyed. What has changed today, I want to know, and what is it that we didn't know? There is development in technology, but it's the same seed of violence. The only change I can see, and I'd like people here who spoke to respond, is that the bomb was a one-day event. Of course, its effects were for several years. The Vietnam thing was a wartime event. What digitalization and AI does is to make it an everyday thing. And it's sold to everyone. And it's sold as a necessary aspect of development. But even our economists have not divulged or sort of divested themselves of this classification of developing, underdeveloped, and developed countries. So forget the politician. We in the university don't seem to have. So I think there is an addiction to technology, and as Malikarjun said, We cannot think any longer that we can have the cake and eat it too.
Okay.
We need de-addiction centers, which I think have already started to some measure with regard to cell phones and games and things like that. But yeah, I think that I'd like your response to that.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? The only point I would like to add is, the bomb, whether it was the nuclear bomb or the napalm bomb or the genocide in Gaza or anything, these are not, one-time events. I think they continue for, their effects continue for a long, long, long
No, I want to clarify that the digital, what the digital does is to make you, create an illusion of everydayness and of peace and of communication and friendship,
that point
which
is well taken.
Is
Yes.
a complete.
That point is well taken. Yes. Please.
Sir, I wanted to ask one question to Naveen, sir, basically. So when he was talking about technology, as he is saying from his own epistemological footings, that it is not an applicable of science in that sense, but it can be theorized in terms of social relationships and the structure of social relationship that's produced. Then he brought the debate of structure and agency, and the societal structure being kind of determined by AI. So my question is, what about, you have talked about the conception of the structure, but what about the concept of agency, especially in terms of potential quantum consciousness that we are saying, that AI can generate its own autonomous agency. And in that case, that is my first question in terms of social agency. And second is why you are trying to decouple these two things, that technology is not the application of science and only about social structures, because as the albatross was around the mariner's neck, so we can keep the albatross around the neck of science as well, the way it is proceeding. That's the two cases.
We have 5 minutes to 8 at our disposal. You had a question? Okay. Questions are more important than answers.
Okay,
That is a Teacher's Day message.
So my question is open to any of the panelists, but particularly to Professor Kellner. You briefly mentioned in the end about misinformation and how Trump or any other political leader for that matter, the Indian case of course is applicable, use digital medium to pursue a very propagandistic kind of a politics, where what often has happened is that what is real is itself an illusion, right? So there is a social real that's there, but at the same time, one starts questioning if what is real is actually real. So right, there's this illusion that's created, a propaganda, better word to say. So how does one then understand political change and agency in this era where misinformation and disinformation is completely captured, the very functioning and foundation of the political?
Okay. Now we will have 1 minute each from the panelists. Naveen.
Do I start? I think before anything else, I want to respond to Malik. Yeah, it's poetic as ever, but I disagree, Malik. Saying no is not where we stop. Resist is not where we stop. We have to imagine. Think about the imaginaries. I was just last night. I was listening to this Rajasthani folk song, which is informed on a Buddhist parable. It goes something like, "Heli kin sang kares ne." It's about a bird who is in the middle of a forest which is burning, and the bird is thinking about the tree in which it sits every day, it feeds from, it gets shelter from. There is a forest fire happening, all the animals are living, and this little bird goes to the lake and takes little drops of water in his wings and comes and tries to douse the fire. There is a powerful imaginary there. We can reimagine technology in a different way. We need to recognize the way capitalism captured technology. But that's not to leave there is no state of nature here to go back to, which technology is the air that we breathe. We need to repopulate the technology that we have. That's where I come from. Yeah, so that's just so because that's I felt that's the most important intervention I could feel. 1, 2. So, and this goes on to the, even if you think about essentialists like Heidegger, it talks about end-framing, standing reserves, and so on. But there is also techne as art in him. There is a possibility, there's a radical possibility in even in Heidegger, who's like, in some ways, such a strong essentialist about technology. So I think we need to be able to read possibilities into a contemporary and imagine a different future. What's the point otherwise? The forest is burning. Do we think about love, compassion as the way to save our home? Or do we just say, okay, the battle is lost, we're going to wait for the fire to... That's not where I come from, I'm sorry. Yeah. No, I have to respond to the two questions first. I'm sorry. Yeah. The second is about the question of consciousness. Yeah. And I'm going to tie this with the two questions about network. Yeah. How do you imagine technology? Quick fire response to you would be, what is if technology precedes science historically in many ways? I'm not saying there is no application of science and technology, but I'm trying to take the scientific rationality, the legitimation it gives in public sphere, and I'm not doing it. It's already done. Technology a lot of time precedes science. If that's the way historically it's happening, we need to recognize it. So, the question of consciousness, we need to talk further. Quick answer, just one sentence. If you think about technology, where meaning lies in technology, you start looking at the structure, you start looking at the tools, you start looking at the system, you end up thinking, where does the meaning lie? You end up with design maybe. Then you look at the design of a bulb. You start, historically, if you start looking at the design of a bulb, you end up with, not with efficiency, but a series of strategies by multiple actors trying to seal the deal, the consensus of a design as such. Historically, you will see it's not efficiency. It's a way in which different actors are negotiating with each other, through hook or by crook, to come up with an acceptable idea of a design. Then, the moment you unpack design in such a way, you see a set of social strategies between competing political actors. That's what I mean. But we can talk about it later.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes.
I just want to take a couple of points. The first is about the theoretical aspects raised about interconnection and nearness. And I really think that we cannot afford to be essentialists, because I'm thinking about a study we did a few years ago about migrants in Southeast Asian countries that are receiving countries for women who work inside the domestic sphere, who are 24/7 locked up in the houses, and it was the mobile phone that gave them the connection and the nearness actually to assemble in the public park on the day that they had that one day of leave, which was on a Sunday. And I really think that we might want, nostalgia is very tempting, I think transcendence is also very tempting, but I think empirically speaking, if you really look at neurodivergent individuals, if you look at the Paralympics, we cannot deny the role of technology in making people feel fully human. So the access to being whole and being fully human could also be cyborgian. And therefore, ontologically at stake for men is actually the thing that we have to unpack. What's ontologically at stake for women might be very much in conflict with what is ontologically at stake for men. These are questions to think about. I also think that with respect to your comment, ma'am, for me, it's because I also am in a space of praxis and action. So we look at, how do you deal with people? We work in 60 villages, we work in the public schools in Karnataka and Kerala. We build AI for the education system. So we do many things where trade-offs become necessary because it's really not an academic setting, right? So you have to stand there and make your trade-offs. I feel that it's quite important to understand the changing nature of social relations or technology and society and that particular dialectic, for the simple reason that your actions and choices and politics is influenced by how you unpack the here and now. So at some level, because digital technologies for the very first time bring together the means of communication with the means of production. Earlier we had the printing press that was separate, right, which was means of communication, and you had other technologies which were the means of production. It was a different kind of empirical reality. But today, the reality of digitality is a society where communication fuses with the means of production. Data becomes both an inalienable part of the self, and data as a valued resource in prediction models, in medicine, in trying to solve questions of cancer. So we really have to understand, I think, so technological advances, I think, become very important in situating ontological realities of action and resistance and transformation.
Thank you. Immaculada?
I would like to give my minute to Douglas Kellner. I would like to hear him.
Thank you very much. Yes, Douglas Kellner.
And I'm going to give mine to Andrew Feenberg.
Okay.
But everything I say about Andrew, I agree with Bill. Actually, both Feenberg and I believed in or developed a critical theory of technology based on the work of Herbert Marcuse. Marcuse was one of the great theorists of technology in the United States from, let us say, the 1940s until his death in 1979. That following Heidegger, actually, Marcuse theorized an entire technological civilization, culture. Feenberg and I argue that technology is dialectical. Like Marcuse, it is bad, is good. It's constructive, it's deconstructive. It's constructive, and yes, deconstructive or destructive. So take the atom bomb, and that for a Donald and Horkheimer was the horse show. So we've created technology that can blow the world apart. In Vietnam, we created technology that could destroy the Vietnamese nation, destroy their agriculture with napalm. And by the way, we see the same thing going on in Palestine today. It's not just that 40,000 human beings have been killed by the Israeli assault on Gaza. It's not just that Gaza has been flattened, all the houses destroyed, the environment's been destroyed, the water supply, the health system, etc. So technology can be horrible, horrible instruments of destruction and domination of all sorts. But they can be instruments of liberation. And let's go back to digital media for a while. It was digital media that produced the biggest global demonstration, mostly by students, Andy's students in Penn. I've just retired, but my students and colleagues at UCLA, Columbia, my alma mater, there were student protests against the Palestinian movement, against the attack on Palestine, for the support of the Palestinian movement, where there were encampments, there were sit-ins and occupations, and our school's about to open again, our universities, and I think we'll see that same thing. So actually from the 1960s, we used technology as instruments of political change and transformation. We had pirate radio, we had alternative television, I did public access TV, alternative video movement, feminist movement, made films and wrote poetry and used the means of communication to promote feminists. The civil rights movements, the same thing. Black Power, there were songs, there were movies by Spike Lee, documentaries about
Sorry, we have to conclude, otherwise they will switch off our lights.
Okay, so I just want to make the point, some people were saying that we're doomed, we're finished. Technology is already won. And it's the same thing with AI, by the way, what I was just saying. We can use AI for human purposes, for medicine, to improve our intelligence, to improve global communication, or we can use it for the destruction of the world. So I guess I'll just conclude that we should, and following Feenberg and Marcuse in this, have a dialectical theory of technology that sees both the positive and negative. But it's up to us. We have to be the actors and use our agency concerning how we will use technology to produce a better world or a worse world, or to destroy the world. That's what we're facing now. The human species is facing very important questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That were questions for Manindra and Andulamas, but I don't think we have time. We conclude it has been a great beginning this evening, and thank you all. And the early panel, and the second panel, and all the students, and some very challenging questions. Thank you very much. We know the seriousness of the challenge, but we are confident we will understand and carry on our struggle with hope. Thank you all very much. You want some concluding announcement? Yes. Sanjana will make some announcement. Yeah.
So we will begin with the very first panel tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. The panel is Philosophy of Technology. We also have other panels scheduled, which includes Quantum Consciousness and New Technology at 11:30 a.m. And at around 2:30 p.m. we have the third panel, which is Medicine and Technology, and the final panel, which is Science, Technology and Society. So I hope to see you all tomorrow as well. Thank you so much.
And the programs are available.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right. So now the program is available.
The program is also available both on our website as well as we have the colloquium meter. So please, whichever session you wish to attend, please join us. Thank you.
The website was hacked, but it is now working.